Hi, this is Nilton from craftofprogramming.com, and this is part 3 and last of the complete setup of Intellij IDEA. Let's get started. So one thing that I showed on the previous video was the settings. In particular, I showed you how to configure code styles, code schemes, and how to import code schemes. So all of these settings are stored in the local user folder. Let's take a look at that. So let's go to users. So all of these settings are stored here in this folder. So as you can see, code styles are defined here. This is one of them I defined earlier. Color schemes are defined here. And the key map, as you see, the one that I just defined, it's here. And you can see the list of shortcuts that we defined, as well as plugins, quick lists. And so all of the changes that you make to the Intellij settings are stored inside the config folder of the Intellij, and this is local. So, but what happens if you are part of a team and you want to share these wonderful settings with other team members? Especially, a new team member comes into the team, and that new developer wants to have access to the color schemes, code styles, and so on and so forth. So obviously, one basic thing you can do is to export the settings. And when you export the settings, you can choose what you want to export. So like I showed, the code style and the editor colors or schemes, the key maps, the quick lists, and so on. So you choose to do that, and you select the place where you want to export, and you do it. And it's saved as a zip file. You can also obviously export just a scheme, for example, a color scheme. So you go here, something that you may have customized, type a Nilton color scheme, and I can export. Okay, and again I choose where to export it. And then this is all manual. You export manually, and someone imports manually. So Intellij supports the ability to share this project automatically on a repo. So what you come here, settings repository, and you have to specify the URL. So to do that, let's create a GitHub project, a repo, sorry, where we're going to store the Intellij IDEA settings. Maybe you want to say settings. Okay, so let's create this. Okay, so we have this project, Intellij IDEA settings. Let's copy the repo URL. So now that we have created our repo that's going to store the Intellij settings, let's push the changes to that repo. So we come to File, Settings Repository. So one thing I need to mention first is you need to make sure that you have the plugins, the corresponding plugin installed. So go to Plugins and search for Settings Repository. So make sure that this plugin is installed and it's enabled. If it's not, then go to Marketplace and install it. So if you have this plugin installed and it's enabled, you go to Settings Repository, you paste the URL, and you have three options: merge, override local, or override remote. If it is if it is the first time you are setting up the settings project, you're going to select override remote. The override local is when you are pulling those settings into your Intellij. Merge is if you have made changes to the setting and you want to basically merge the changes from the remote with your local and push them upstream. And lastly, these changes are going to take effect either via autosync or manually. Autosync happens when you close the project or IntelliJ. Those changes are going to be pushed to upstream, or manually you have to manually push those changes. I'll show both options shortly. But for now, you paste the URL of the repo and you press override remote. So the first time you're trying to push the changes to the remote, GitHub is going to prompt you for an access token. So let's define that access token and provide it here. So you go to your account, settings, developer settings, personal access token, and you generate a new token and you give it a name or a description. IntelliJ settings repo, that'll do. And let's select some scope. To make it simple, let's just select repo and let's generate the token. And let's copy the token. Let's go back to IntelliJ, paste it here and press OK. Okay, settings successfully synced. And if we go back to the repo, click here, and we see all of the settings being that were pushed. One thing I need to mention is that unfortunately the plugins are actually not synced. So it's just an artifact of this settings, repository syncing. You can't sync plugins, but notice that the code style that we defined were pushed, as well as the key map, quick list, and so on. So now for syncing, you have basically two options. Like I said, you can sync manually or automatically. So to sync automatically, you go back to settings. Let's minimize this. You go to tools, you click on settings repo, and you make sure that this is checked, auto sync. So this means that changes are going to be pushed every time you close the project or IntelliJ. If you don't want that to happen, then you uncheck this box, press OK, and you go to VCS sync settings, and then you do it manually, override remote. Okay, so now on the machine that you want to import those settings, this is what you have to do. Okay, so let's assume that you are now on a different machine and you want to import the settings from the remote settings that we configured. So let's open the same project, and as you can see, the look and feel, color scheme is completely different. This is a simple raw installation of IntelliJ. So if you look at the color scheme, this is just the basic color scheme. We don't have any of the custom color schemes that we define or code styles. And also the quick list that we defined, for instance, if you recall, was Nilton quick list. It's not there, and so on and so forth. So to do that, to import those settings, we basically have two options. So one option is to go to File, Settings repo, and configure it here, and you just do override local. The risk of doing that is that, it depends on what you want to do. If you have experienced users, and you want more than one person to push the changes to the remote, then you can do it like that. Another way of doing it, which is what I will show, is you go to setting repo, and you define a read-only source. So let's go to Chrome and go to our project. Let's get the URL and let's paste it here. So now what this does, and let's keep autosyncs set. So what this does is that the settings are going to be imported onto IntelliJ, but this user will not be able to push changes to the remote. Okay, so it's going to be a read-only repo. So we click OK, and now everything is being synced, and we should be able to see on the color scheme that we got the dark Juno and the custom color scheme that I had defined on the previous on the settings repo. Code style, Nilton code style here. We see the quick list here, and we have the ability to execute the commands. So again, remember that the plugins are not synced. That's unfortunate, which you can see in the repo. So this was the last part of the complete setup of Intellij IDEA. If you found this video useful, please consider subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to press the bell icon to be notified about future content. Also leave it a thumbs up to support the channel, and leave a comment below on positive criticism and how to improve these videos moving forward. This is Nilton from craftofprogramming.com. Many thanks for watching.